So today I'm sharing how I set up the Z offset in order to be able to get great bed adhesion and also to be able to get a silky smooth finish. So I'm going to walk you through that, and I'm going to share the method that I got there. But in case you're wondering what this is basically a calibration cube where I sliced it on Cura to stop at the second layer. And I have a video on how to do that, and that's at the end of the video. So if you're interested, you can always jump forward to how to do that. And this here will print in basically about 10 minutes. So one of the things that you're going to want to do on the Kobra Go is you want to do your auto bed leveling, and that ends up resetting your Z offset here on the main screen to 0. Now honestly, for me, I don't care if that number is positive or negative, but what I'm going to do before I get started, and whoops, I slipped up there, I like to raise the Z axis up, meaning that I'm raising the nozzle away from the bed, and I'll go up to like 3 millimeters. I do this after I do a bed leveling. So I will raise it up, and then, here we go, so I'm up to 3 millimeters right now. So that's going to be well above the bed. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to start the file that I use, and I call it brim. I put a large brim onto the calibration cube for the method that I like to use to see that I'm getting good adherence. So I'm going to get that started, and while it is starting, I'm going to let you know that I converted my bed to springs instead of the solid spacers, and then I used the sensor that is on the print head in order to be able to set this bed up so that I have the maximum deviation that I have on this thing is 0.08 of a millimeter. So we're talking about the difference of basically the thickness of a human hair, maybe just slightly more. And we're also talking about whatever the accuracy is of that sensor to be able to take measurements on here. So I don't want to rely solely on the bed leveling for getting good prints. I've set it up so that I can have the closest to level that I can do, possibly by adjusting the fasteners that I put underneath this bed. So I also turn on the auto bed leveling so that you're going to be able to see that the print head actually will move up and down, but is very, very little. Okay, so while it's warming up, just to mention that there is a video that I have made on the conversion that I did to this bed, and the link will be at the end of this video if you're interested to see that. Okay, so it's now starting to heat the nozzle, and I like to run this copper silk filament at 205, so I'm just making that one small adjustment. Before we get going, I like to clean the bed with the iso alcohol that I have on a paper towel here, make sure it's nice and clean. We're going to get some good bed adhesion. Alright, so now we're starting to go. I'm going to go into my Z offset. I'm now looking at bed level height to see that I have a big gap between the nozzle and the bed, so I'm going quickly to close that gap. I grab a hold of the filament so that I'm able to pull on it while I'm lowering the print head. And okay, so I've lost it, so I'll just get down closer, and I'm going to grab the end of that filament, trying not to touch the bed while I lower the nozzle closer. I'm seeing that, okay, I'm starting to get close because I'm starting to get a little bit of stick slip going on. Alright, so I've lost the end of it again, and I now have a little bit of stick, and I'm trying to use my fingernail to pull it away. So I'm going to keep pulling it until I see that I'm starting to get some stick happening, and now it's starting to stick to the bed. So now it's starting to actually take the profile of the brim, and I'm using my fingernail. Okay, it's not bad. One more right there. Okay, so it's sticking to the bed. I'm at negative 0.520. All right, and so I will watch that as it's printing to see what the surface looks like. Once it's worked its way inwards a fair bit, then I'll actually take my finger just to feel the texture of the surface to see how close I am. If I feel that I can see spaces between the filament, it means I'm too far away. And if I'm creating ridges and lines, it means I'm too close. So I will typically go from the left-hand side here because I just find it easier to be able to see that. And so it's going down pretty smooth, and I'm sorry about bumping the camera around. So I'll just come over and I'll feel the texture here. There's a little band there. It feels pretty smooth to me right now. So it's looking pretty good. So I think you get the idea and the gist. So I'm going to jump out of this and I'm going to show you the different samples and what it is that I did in order to be able to get to the point where I have a very, very smooth finish on that top layer. Okay, so you can see that on my first attempt I had the Z offset at negative 0.52, and this was the result, and it's pretty good, it's pretty smooth, but I really wanted to be able to fine-tune to see where it could end up going. But I also took a piece of white paper and I slipped it in behind in order to be able to have a look, and you can see that there's little perforations in that print. So that's an easy way to analyze what the quality of the print is, and you can see it clearly on the video there. So I exaggerated by going in each direction, adding 0.1 of a millimeter, which is pretty significant on a 3D printer. So just so that you know that when your nozzle is too far away, this is the type of thing that will happen because you are not adhering one line to the next. And when you go to try to peel this off the plate, and it was very well stuck, it comes apart just like you see here. So on the opposite end of things, you're going to end up with having lines that you can drag your fingernail across where it'll make a noise versus when you have it set up. What I found was that the ideal setting in my situation was negative 0.058, and that's how I ended up with this very, very smooth finish. You can't see any holes or light coming through, so this is great. Once I'd done that, because that's very focused on the center of the bed. All right, so once I had it dialed in, then I wanted to see how it's going to print over the entire surface of the bed. So that's when I printed this test pattern, which I just can't remember the name of right now, but I printed this test pattern to see how does it perform over the entire surface of the bed. Well, the center square here is pretty much perfect. The place that I found that there's a little bit of deviation is the end corner here and this corner over here. So the sensor does not measure that corner perfectly, so the bed could be diving off. But I don't tend to really print over in that corner so much anyway. So, and I'm really, on a larger print that might get into that corner, I'm not entirely sure how it would affect it, but the results are still pretty good. So I have no complaints, and the measurements come out very, very good as well on this. You can see this outer ring is like, I mean, it's intact, it's very smooth, it's very consistent, and no problems to be able to lift it off the bed once the bed cooled down. So just to give you a quick recap on the results, the Z offset was set to negative 0.42 for this one, and originally when it printed on the bed it looked great, but of course getting it off the bed made all the layers separate. So when you're too high, the layer lines will not adhere to each other and you end up with a very see-through. I think it's kind of neat, honestly. It kind of reminds me of a Slinky from when I was a kid, but anyways. So on the far left here, it was set to negative 0.62, and it was too close to the point where you can see lines and ridges where the nozzle was actually getting dragged through the filament as it was laying down. Very, very rough. And then here in the center, I ended up settling on negative 0.58 for my Z offset. So very, very smooth. You can't see through it at all. And honestly, I think this is fast and simple to be able to do. It takes less than 10 minutes to print one of these. It takes very little material, and you're going to be able to fine-tune easily. Once you get the hang of it, it goes very, very quickly. So if you want to know how to be able to pause the print, you can use the video in the upper left that I created for color change, but you can also use it for this. And all you do is you basically, once it's finished printing, you abandon it. If you want to learn how to be able to convert your bed to have these springs and be able to make it so that the bed is manually adjusted, and then using the automatic bed leveling simultaneously, the video will be up here on the right. Thanks very much for watching. Happy printing.